Good evening. This is Scotty Sanders coming to you live via Facebook Live. I'm so glad that you've joined me. And listen, I'm excited about sharing this topic with you about why less is more. So again, I want to talk to you a little bit about, what my purpose is and why I'm even doing Facebook Live is because I believe that every person can change their world. And my purpose is to encourage and empower others to live, lead, and to finish well. And I know some of you may be watching. You've known me for a long time, and you know my name is Scotty Sanders. But for the rest of you that don't, that's my name. And I focus on international leadership consulting. I help people in multiple countries. I love helping develop people, helping people to lead themselves well. Because I know this, when you lead yourself well, it gives you a great opportunity to lead others well. And we want to do that. We want to lead ourselves well, and we want to lead others well. And I also want to ask you to consider sharing this Facebook Live to some of your friends and people that follow you and keep up with you. I want it to be a blessing and helpful to you, but I also want you to pass it on to your network as friends as well. So if you would do that, I would greatly appreciate it. So that's the first thing I want to ask you to do. So every week when I come to you, I want to share a little piece of trivia with you of things that either about Cindy or myself that I think you might find a little bit interesting. So over the last 10 years, in fact, I started my consulting firm about 10 years ago. April will be 10 years, so I'm right at the 10-year mark. And along the way, I've worked with a number of corporate clients and different things that I've done. And one particular client asked me maybe my most unusual request. And by the way, I'm seeing some of my friends join in, so I want to just say hello to Marie and Kristen. Thanks for joining. And good to have you with us. So one of my clients asked me, they were trying to make a connection with some work they wanted to do with the Cherokee Nation, and they had been trying to get a meeting scheduled with the chief of the Cherokee Nation, and they just were unable to pull that off. And so they said, Scotty, we want to give you that assignment. You're good with people. Try to make some connections and see what you can do. We've just been unable to do it. So that became, my task to try to make that arrangement. So I made a couple, 2-3 trips into Oklahoma. I made several phone calls, months of trying, but I finally, out of persistence, was able to work out to have a meeting with the chief of the Cherokee Nation. And let me just tell you what impressed me about this guy, that he was so humble. You could tell he was highly competent. He was so encouraging. He listened to what I had to say in the presentation. And in fact, my client ended up doing some work with the Cherokee Nation. So it was kind of a neat story. So you just never know. So again, I actually had a sit-down meeting with the chief of the Cherokee Nation. One of the highlights. I really enjoyed meeting this gentleman. He was a great encouragement and something I'll never forget. So again, I'm going to be talking to you about why less is more. Again, this is Scotty Sanders coming to you, and I'm a international leadership consultant. I like to help people to lead themselves well. Ron, thanks for joining me. I see my buddy Leroy. Thanks for joining me as well. So I want to talk to you about why less is more. One of my favorite quotes comes from a guy named Howard Hendricks, and he said this: the secret to concentration is elimination. Now that's worth repeating. The secret to concentration is elimination. And here's why. It's hard to concentrate with all of the distractions that we have. We're being bombarded with information all around us. And we get so busy with our schedule. We schedule so many different things, and it really impedes the ability to concentrate. So this whole idea of doing less is more, part of that is eliminating some things that we're doing. Steve Norris, thanks for joining me. Creative Director Kevin Lynham, who will be taking some notes. Kevin, I see you've already done that one right off. The secret to concentration is elimination. So Kevin, thanks for doing that. So here's something else I want you to get. I'm setting the table for this whole concept of why less is more. I want you to think about this. Busyness does not equate to effectiveness. Some people think the busier you are, the more effective you are. In some ways, it's the opposite of that. And by the way, busyness does not equate being productive either, nor does busyness equate to being successful. You've got to get that out of your mind. I've worked with some people, I'm giving no names here, but I've worked with some people that they were extremely busy. I mean, they'd be telling me I'm working 70, 80 hours a week, but they were the least effective, least productive, and some of the least successful people I've known. So working more hours doesn't make you more successful, more productive, or more effective. Okay? Again, that is why less is more. So I want to share with you the 2 best kept secrets as it relates to leadership. Okay? I'm not saying these are the most powerful or profound, but they're somewhat hidden and they're somewhat counterintuitive. All right? So I'm going to get to those. I want to thank Renee Cates for joining, also Bob Hayden for joining as well. So let me share with you these 2 best kept secrets of leadership. The less you do, the more you accomplish. That's the first one. The less you do, the more you accomplish. Now that on the surface doesn't add up, right? It's usually the more you do, the more you accomplish. Now I'm not talking about your attitude. I'm not talking about your effort, but a little bit less you do is focusing on just a few things and doing those extremely well. So the less you do, the more that you accomplish. That's the first leadership secret. The second one is this. The less you do, the more you enable others to accomplish. You get that? The less you do, then you're enabling others to accomplish more. But if you're doing everything all the time, you're not allowing others the opportunity to get things done. So again, the 2 key things there, I want you to know, the less you do, the more you accomplish, and the less you do, the more you enable others to accomplish. So get that in your mind. And that's really a change of your mindset. It's changing your mindset to, I've got to stay busy. I've got to stay active. I've got to be doing a lot of things. I've got to be working all the time. Okay? Again, busyness does not equate to effectiveness, productivity, or being successful. So let me break that down for you. Let's talk about some principles behind this whole concept of why less is more. All right? You ready to go with me? So again, this is Scotty Sanders. I'm an international leadership consultant. I love getting to invest in people, speak into them, help them to become better leaders. Steve Norris, thanks for joining me. Beverly Martindale as well. Thanks for joining me tonight. So again, if this is something you feel like is helpful to you, I want to encourage you. I'm asking for a favor. Would you share that with someone else? My good friend Jeff Gooden, thanks Jeff for joining me as well. So let's move on. Let's talk about the principles behind this whole concept of why less is more. Let me just say this to you. When you get that in your mind, you make this mindset shift, it will allow you to focus more. It will allow you to accomplish more because you're not scattered. You're not chasing a bunch of things. And for me, it's a stress reducer. When you're able to clear your plate a little bit and focus on only a few things, it really reduces the amount of stress and that overwhelming feeling. So let's talk about some of the principles. Here's the first one. Play to your strengths and delegate your weaknesses. Play to your strengths and delegate your weaknesses. So, and we've heard that before, right? The problem is we hear it, but we don't really do it. We think, well, I need to work on my weaknesses or I need to do things to get better. You know, there's some things, no matter how hard at it, I'll never be good at doing it. So I want to play to my strengths and I want to delegate my weaknesses or just don't do those, right? Let me give you a real example. Well, not a real example, but something maybe you can wrap your mind around. It'd be like this, and people that know me, I'm the least handyman person you'll ever meet. Okay, I'm just not. I take after my dad on that one. Melanie Smith, thanks for joining me. You'll appreciate this because your dad was a handyman for sure. So if I had a plumbing issue at my house, and maybe I was smart enough to figure out, man, I've got a toilet that needs to be replaced. I know that sounds gross. I got a toilet I need to replace. Well, I can go down to Lowe's and undoubtedly I can find a toilet that will fit. I can take the oven off. I got to cut the water off and all that. I could probably figure out in time how to do that. Now, it may take me 5, 6. My daughter, by the way, she's my producer, and she's laughing under her breath right now about my dad changing out a toilet because I would never attempt to do that. I just wouldn't do it, right? Because it absolutely would not be playing to my strengths. It would be a big weakness of mine. But here's the thing. I could spend 6, 7, 8 hours replacing that toilet, okay? So I've just wasted a lot of my time where a plumber that knows what he's doing, he could probably do it in 20 minutes. It would take me hours to do it. And the chances are it wouldn't be near the quality if I did it myself. So I don't play to my weaknesses. I delegate those. I call the plumber. That would be a delegation. Now, again, you got to have enough money to pay a plumber to do that. So you want to work in your strength so you have enough money to pay the plumber along the way. John McLeod, thanks for joining me, and Donna Payne as well. So that's the first principle. Play to your strengths, delegate your weaknesses, all right? Saves you time and money, and it's just the way to go, right? So here's the second one, is this. Within the context of your current responsibilities and your core competencies, the goal is to only do, and I want you to get this, only do what you can do. Only do what you can do, all right? So I want you to think about that based on your job now, what you're good at doing. I want you to think about what is it that only you could do at your place of work or what you're involved in doing. I want you to focus in on that. In fact, when you focus in, what is it that only you can do? Your thing that you're really good at doing, focus in on that, only what you can do. Then I want you to think about creating not a to-do list, but create a not-to-do list. Did you know we spend a lot of our time doing things that we're really not good at doing? We need to create a not-to-do list. And some of the things on our not-to-do list, no one needs to be doing. It makes no sense. I find people doing things and I'm like, why are you doing that? Well, I used to do it and it's worked out. I've been doing it for years and years. No, quit doing it. We need to cut the clutter out. Less is more. Reduce things down where you're only focusing on a few things, okay? So that's the second one. Within your core responsibilities and your core competencies, what is it? Ask the question, what is it that only you can do? Get that in your mind. Think through that. And then I want you to work on creating a not-to-do list, things that you have no business doing at all. So that's the second one. The third one is this. Kind of connects with it. The further away you are from your core competencies, the weaker the leader you become. The further you're away from your core competencies, the weaker the leader you become. Okay? Now, I want you to think about your core competency, the thing that you do best. Think about a target, right? Hitting an arrow at your target. That is your sweet spot. That's the thing that you do the very best. Every circle you go out, you're moving away from your core competency, and the weaker the leader you become. So you want to focus in. You want to hit the target like a bullseye. What are the 2 or 3 or 4 things that you do very well? Outside of that would be, you do less well, and then further out you go, it becomes a weakness of yours, right? So you want to focus in on your core competencies, and the weaker you move away from that, the further you move away from that, the weaker the leader you become, and the less effective you would be. And that's how you do. Why you do less is more is when you focus in on your core competencies, what you do well, you can do less because it's your sweet spot. You're passionate about it. You do a great job with that, right? Ricky Takewell, thanks for joining me tonight. So let's move on. So we've hit some of the principles. Let's get to the fourth one here, is this. Great achievers are well-rounded, or not well-rounded. We think they're well-rounded. We think someone that can achieve, they can do anything. They're a jack of all trades. They can do a little bit of that. Really, great achievers are not well-rounded, but rather men and women that have discovered what I call their superpower. And they use their superpower. This is their expert level. They're almost like an expert in 1 or 2 or maybe 3 things, okay? So they're not well-rounded. They're not just good at everything. Listen, what I've found, people are not willing to pay people for average work, okay? I'm pretty good at doing this. They'd much rather pay larger amounts of money for people that are at the expert level. So I want you to think about not being well-rounded. What are some things that you can really specialize in that are really like, these are your superpowers, right? And I believe every person has at least one superpower. You need to figure that out, and you want to focus in on that. So that's the fourth one, okay? So the fifth one is this. Leadership is about multiplying your efforts through the efforts of others. And I refer to this as a force multiplier, okay? Leadership is about multiplying your efforts through the efforts of others, and this is a force multiplier. So I want you to get this math in your head. So if you are I want to be busy, I want to be doing all the time, I want to be the person making it happen, you can do your very, very best, and you can only get at 100%. You can't go over 100%. When you hear people say, I'm going to give 102% or 105%, you can't really do that. I know it sounds good. You can only give 100, right? Same thing if you're the doer versus the developer. If you're not a multiplier and you're just the doer, the most you can ever do is 100. But if you become a multiplier and you're working through the efforts of others, you're multiplying yourself through others. It goes from 100, it could go to 1,000, it could go to 10,000, it could go to 100,000 if you become a multiplier, because you multiply yourself through the efforts of others. And that's when the magic happens right there, when you get that piece down. So much of us, why less is more is because we can't be trying to do everything. We multiply ourselves through the efforts of others. So that's 5 principles related to why less is more. And I believe I shared with you tonight the 2 key insights into why less is more. So what I want to do now, I want to open up for questions. I want to just see if who's joined us. So I've got, I think that's Jinda Swanner. I probably messed up on that name, and I apologize for that. I've seen several people join us tonight. And again, I want to encourage you, Kathy Jones. Kathy is a multiplier for sure. She multiplies in what she does in a big, big way. And so, Kathy, you do have a superpower. I want you to know that. I'll tell you about that tomorrow, all right? So I want to encourage you. Again, this is Scotty Sanders. I'm an international leadership consultant. I love getting to do this, invest in you, helping you to lead well, that you can lead yourself well, you can lead others well, you can lead your family as well also. So what I want to do, I want to encourage and ask you again, would you mind sharing this on your Facebook? That way others can find about it as well. So I've got really some great questions. I've got 5 that I want to discuss with you. And the reason I'm going to take a little bit more time on the questions, so I want to look at my time, my producer, what's our time? So we're doing pretty good, a few more minutes. So let's talk about some of these questions. So the first one that I have is, what do you do if your job requires you to do work outside of your core competencies? Very common question. In fact, it's a great question because that's real, right? That's what happens all the time. Debbie Robertson, Tim Coates, Joey Cowan, Mark Feltz, thank you guys and gals for joining me as well. So what do you do when your job requires you to do things outside of your core competencies? So let me suggest a few things. There will always be a certain percentage of work that will be outside of that. There's no perfect job that everything is in your core competency. It just didn't work out that way. But I like to practice the 80-20 principle here, okay? If you're spending only 20% of your time in your core competency and 80% outside of that, that's a problem. I call that a job change needs to happen, right? If you're spending about 50% of your time, well, then maybe that's good. I like to work in the 80-20 and the opposite, where I'm spending 80% of my time in the core competency side. I'm spending it in my sweet spot, the things that I do best. So that's what I would encourage you. Find ways to delegate things that are outside of your core competency. And I'm not talking about dump on people, but delegate it to other people. Or you may have to eventually change your job if it's not within your core competency, okay? So Steve Farmer, thanks for joining me tonight as well. So the second question, won't people think I'm not working hard if I'm not always busy, okay? You know what? That's a fear that I think we deal with, of people saying, okay, if I'm not busy all the time, they're going to think I'm not doing my job. I may lose my job. And what I'd say to you is, if you're at a place where you work and that's the culture that your boss, all they're interested in is you being busy all the time, that's not the best place to work. You want to be at a place that they value first you as a person, all right? They value out of the relationship and doing what's best for you. And a good leader over you, they want you to play to your strengths. And they want to value you as a multiplier and a developer, not just the person doing all the work, okay? You want someone that pushes you in that direction. So that's how I'd answer the second question. Third one is this: what are some examples of superpowers? Again, that's a phrase that I use. It's not just common for me, but I think about people having superpowers. So I jotted down a few of these, and here's some that come to my mind. Take something that is complicated and make it simple, right? They can take a complex issue or problem and they can explain it in a simple way. I know people sometimes take something simple and they make it complicated. So do the opposite of that. Someone that can cast a compelling vision that will rally people around it. Someone that can paint a picture. This is where we're going, and it's so inspiring. People are willing to follow that leader. That's a superpower. Don't you love following leaders like that? Another one, and this is something I believe we can all practice. I think we all have it in us. We just have to turn it loose, and that is encouraging people. That's something here you need to hear this. That's something every one of us can do, and everyone needs it. All right, so just know that. Be an encourager. That's a superpower. I don't know about you. I love being around people that encourage me. Ted Weslowski, thank you for joining me. You're an encourager. Lynn Carter, an encourager as well. So there's a few superpowers. Remembering names is a superpower. All right. Now, that used to be a very big superpower of mine, but my age is diminishing that superpower over time. I have to work harder. I know some guys that are great at that. But remembering names, the favorite name a person likes to hear is their own name. And then quickly building trust with people. That's a superpower, because today transparency and trust is so essential in doing business with people. They don't trust you, they're not going to do it. And trust equals speed. When they trust you, they're willing to move a lot faster. Okay, so those are three, and then I had a couple others come in on another page. So let me share those with you. So the fourth question I've got is, how do you go about building a team that you know that you can delegate to, that they'll get their job done, right? And I hear that often. Well, if I give them the job, they may not do it as well as me, or they may not get it done on time, or whatever, right? Well, let me just say this to you. Some of that's you're holding people back. Again, multiplying your efforts through the efforts of others is how you go about delegating and giving that. So you want to build a team that you want to show trust, you want to value them, you want to equip them, they can do it. And the big thing I've found on that is when you make clarity important, where you're clear with them what their instructions are, what the expectations are. A lot of times they don't do it as well, because a lot of times as the leader, we don't make it clear what we expect from them. So part of that's our own fault. So we've got to do a better job of multiplying ourselves by making things clear. And here's another one I've got is, in your consulting work, how do you help managers and company leaders implement this whole concept of why less is more? And what I'd say to you there is this. When I work with organizations, I try to bring in a certain mindset, a growth mindset, and change the culture from a bunch of doers, which is nothing wrong with that, to they have this developmental, this multiplier mindset. And when they do that, they start attracting people that operate that way. It's all about multiplying themselves. So that's one of the things I do. So I start training the leadership. I start trying to inculcate into their culture how you build this developmental type system where people are developers. And then you start rewarding people not based on what they do, but their ability to develop. And that is key right there. If you don't put a measurement to that, and you don't put compensation to it, you get what you reward, right? So that's one of the things. So you build in, training the leaders of what the multiplier effect will have. Start changing the culture. You start communicating the value of being multipliers. And then you start basing compensation based on people's ability to develop others versus just doing. And that's how you get this less is more, because you can focus in on just a few things, your superpower, what you love doing. And when you focus in on doing less and understand that you accomplish more, it's because you have now started multiplying yourself through others, and you're using your superpowers and playing to your strengths. That's how it all comes together. That's how the magic really happens to that. So that's why less is more. And when you do that in your life and embrace that, you'll find you'll start experiencing less stress and a less feeling of being overwhelmed. I work with a couple of different boards for nonprofits, and when I can get them to buy into the vision, take some ownership, and it's not about all of my effort, but multiplying myself